Hello everybody, it's Jay Brereton here with episode 37, I think, of game Chichimecas. It's probably going to be one of the last 2 or 3. The plans are fairly well developed, so I'll just get on with talking about it. Captured a bunch of slaves, very useful. A battle in Brightwoods. We lost to Black Hawks, we lost a couple of Long Dead Archers, a couple of Ambushers, and 3 Bandar Warriors. Other than that, not too much to it. There were a couple of unexpected events of no real importance, and yeah, it's just a matter really of preparing the last attacks. So over in Brightwoods, I've made sure kind of in advance that everyone has sufficient gems to last them a couple of fights. I'm also going to move some of these skeletons and troops around. I had a brainwave while I was making a cuppa before before I actually recorded this episode that it'd probably be better to leave this guy Shukadal outside the fort, probably preaching be useful. The reason for that is that if anything were to happen to my prophet, but we still won the battle, which is possible depending on whether the enemy's PG comes in and does some kind of battlefield clear, possibly Wrathful Skies or something like that. Basically, having a backup H3 that wasn't in the fort battle itself could be a very useful thing. So we shall give his air gems to one of the guys up top. Okay, there's a few. All right. Let's give them to Metwell. So I think he's currently on a Thunderfen script actually, but we can change him to be a secondary, or Thunderward rather. We can change him to be a secondary caster of Arifend. Probably cast Thunderward afterwards and leave it at that. He's on conservative casting, so not too much to worry about there. This guy can just be left, well, it doesn't really matter what he casts, but let's get Divine Blessing at least. So yeah, so hopefully this attack will go really well and so on. Might move the Sulphur Haze guys up. They probably won't be targeted in the first round of shooting, and if they're not, then they'll be able to put a fair amount of poison damage and fire damage onto the wish I hadn't done that onto the walls, where ordinarily you have a little bit of a problem getting your damage. So let's just get this guy all the skeletons in. Just because any wall defenders count as having about 20 protection, so things like casting Fireball, for example, you are in no way, shape or form guaranteed, whereas Sulphur Haze, as you can see, is arm negating, and a relatively good source of damage. It also lingers, and because of how Glad effects work, does rather a lot of damage. Let's call this order 3. Sorry, that's probably not a super interesting part of this turn, but okay, Flame Ward. I'm not entirely sure why I'm casting that, so I'll just push him a bit forwards as well, and we'll just try and clear the walls. Sadly, this guy used both of his gems up, so we're going to get less lightning resistance out than I would have liked, which is a shame. I guess we can repurpose this script onto something like Strength of Giants. That would potentially be quite useful. And yeah, basically we have mostly the same setup as last turn. Let's get this guy casting some stuff like Body Ethereal and Luck. But yes, with the added twist of adding Mist, so that any enemy force that either sallies or is waiting for us inside the fort is going to have less precision. So if the enemy is using things like Thunderstrike, perhaps after a storm is cast, you're going to see a whole lot less of that, basically, a whole lot less of that hitting at least. The enemy is probably going to have probably all, I'm thinking about it, of its Zaptec mages that it can have actually teleporting inside. So the battle might be fairly hazardous, but it's just a dice that we have to roll. Now over here we are moving in with all of these guys. They should take it with very minimal casualties and may in fact be useful if we then make a push down here due to circumstances if we have to. Or just as reinforcements to take out Crimson Chichimeca in a more normal way, but yeah, this battle should go a whole lot easier. Basically, all these guys are just going to be able to shoot up the enemy force. The long dead horsemen are really the only dangerous component once they're dealt with either through banishment or through just missile fire or through close combat. The rest is some boars, which I've put some of the Weechel Warrior up front. These guys have animal ore, so they're actually quite useful for that, and the Divine Men may as well not exist, so not too worried about that. Also moving in with the outer battle from Mines of Despair. This means that the enemy's going to have a much harder time, even if they see what's happened here and decide to jump it. They're going to have to siege the fort and then go through, by which time I should, fingers crossed, have won this battle, claimed the throne this turn, teleported someone over and claimed that throne, and just generally held the gates as long as possible. Now over in these thrones, I've jacked the PD up. I may actually not on reflection and save the gold for doing the same to Brightwoods, because Brightwoods the enemy is probably going to retake. You can see some of the forces over here in Tricia, or near Tricia at least, and there's a fair amount still in Relothia, but some of these guys are going to be in Crimson Chichimeca. I would assume going towards they may have been tasked towards Summer Edge, but they're going to be there right now, so in 2 turns they're going to be attacking. So yeah, building up a treasury of gold to prepare for that is quite a useful step to take, I think. In terms of cutting off the reinforcements, I'm also launching an attack with Ferry Trod on Iron Peaks over here. Our PG, although he's not going to be blessed, and nor will the troops, they should do a relatively good job, I think, just of taking care of the situation. I would cast Foul Vapors, but because they're not going to be blessed, our Weechel Warriors could easily die to it and proc an HP route, so instead I'm going to cast Grip of Winter. They might be affected by it, they might not. They do have cold resist, so they're going to be probably more resistant than the enemy troops, and crucially it's just going to be a useful way to further debuff enemies that are already going to have quite a hard time fighting a Sholol, I think. The reason I'm doing that to 62 is basically to screw up the movement of anything coming to help out Brightwoods, because obviously he's going to be en route, and possibly to block the guys inside the fort moving out as well. Depending on where the actual teleport ends up, if it ends up in 55, well, so be it, that's not too much of a problem. If it ends up in 74 or 40, we may be running into issues, although 40 I did kind of want to take anyway due to the proliferation rather of sages from the library over there, so I'd assume it's going to be quite a useful province to have, even if we go there by accident. And given there's going to be sages there, there'll also be a lab, so if nothing else I can just teleport straight out again. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. What else let's talk about? I'm getting out of battle over here in case anything goes terribly wrong, so we've still got a bit of a follow-up plan. And moving in with this guy over here, casting Powerless for Skeletal Legion. The reason that order's set up the way it is, because he could cast Skeletal Legion without, is that it's going to allow a mage who's in the province already, who has a Paralysis anti-magic cast set up, to get that off before Skeletal Legion, which has a secondary effect that can cause disease, MR negating. But I mean, with only 3 turns remaining, even if a lot of stuff gets diseased, which it shouldn't, because it doesn't have any penetration boosters, it wouldn't be too much of a problem. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Pincher Britain, and goodbye.